talk almost forever about the role of churches in helping to contribute to community building, and because I only have 10 minutes, I have scripted what I want to say, and I will say it quite quickly, but I'd love to talk to you more if you want. My family and I moved to Cambridge in 2009 for Jonathan to begin working with the Jubilee Centre. We moved into a house on a long and large main road in the city. A year or so after moving, there was a fire 5 doors down from where we were living, and a young man tragically died. My sadness was heightened by the knowledge that had a police officer come to our door with a photograph and asked me to confirm that this was the man living at the house, I wouldn't have known. I wrote to our immediate neighbours, 20 households in all, acknowledging the tragedy of the young man's death, but also the fact that I didn't know him. And I wondered if there was anything that we, as a group of 20 households, might do to raise our neighbourliness and to grow our sense of community. And if that resonated with anyone else, they would be most welcome to come to our house in 3 days' time for a drink and a discussion as to how. Every household responded to my letter, and bar 2 were represented that 3 days later. We talked and we ate and we drank together and agreed that we would do better at being neighbours, that we would do things from time to time together. We would lend one another things. We would be available in crisis, like when boilers break and so on and so forth. And we did. It took a tragedy, but what was required really was deliberate action on our parts. In years past, such deliberate action would not have been needed. My great-grandparents lived within 100 metres of my grandparents. My own parents lived within 100 miles of their parents. Jonathan and I have spent over half our married lives living in a different country. We are mobile, much more mobile. And that's not in and of itself bad, of course, but it does mean that we need to be deliberate about community cohesion. The church is ideally placed to make a response because it offers a continuity of commitment to loving our neighbour and to affirming the dignity each person inherently carries as one created in the image of God. A young lawyer once asked Jesus who his neighbour was, and Jesus' response gave us the story of the Good Samaritan and the truth that our neighbour is anyone, and especially anyone who is unprotected and in need. The question was, and is, a highly pertinent one for us today, not least to ask, who is my actual neighbour? Who lives in proximity to me? And if you want to blank out for the rest of what I want to say, that's absolutely fine. But answer that question for yourselves. Who is your neighbour? Who lives nearby you? Who needs you to be neighbour to them? Jesus said that the Old Testament law and prophets could be summed up by the command to love God and to love our neighbour. The church, thus, has a ready-made mandate for community building, starting with a commitment to relationships, to loving our neighbour. The Apostle Paul defined for us what love looks like in his letter to the church in Corinth. Others talk of love being so closely linked to listening as to be indistinguishable from it. Communities thrive when they are listened to, but perhaps the most tangible manifestation of love is service. I am currently employed as a pioneer minister on a new housing estate on the edge of St Neots in Cambridgeshire. I was appointed 3 years ago with a blank sheet, no team, no church building, no church gathering. The first thing I did was to change my job title to community chaplain. I know I'm a pioneer and I know what that means within the context of the Anglican Church, but that's not what the community cares about. My first visit on arriving in post was to the local school. The school is the place within our community where the community most naturally comes together in all its diversity. It was September. I know that's a busy time of year, so I took a card just greeting them. acknowledging the busyness of this time of year and introducing myself and saying that I'd like to come back in 2 weeks' time and make an appointment with the head. 2 weeks passed, I returned to reception and made an appointment for the following week. When I eventually met the head teacher, I introduced myself and asked if there was anything she thought I might be able to do. I mentioned in particular my passion for phonics, it's kind of one of my hobbies, and my willingness to read with children who maybe were struggling. Her whole composure toward me changed. Our meeting time was doubled. She took me on a tour of the school and introduced me to her team. I was in. I began visiting, and still do, every Thursday afternoon to read. To that was added an invitation to lead whole school assemblies, especially around Christian festivals. To that was added the invitation to become a school governor and later to offer work-based chaplaincy. To that was added some early intervention coaching for children who are deemed particularly vulnerable and at risk of missing out on education opportunities. The door has grown wider and wider, and relationship in a sense was the bridge. But it began by listening, by loving, and by serving. And I think the school and I are better connected, really, to the whole community through the relationship that we share. As a church now on Love's Farm, we're a fresh expression of church that's been meeting for the past 2 years. We continue to serve the school in a number of ways. The writer John Tyson defines parish as a geographical area of spiritual responsibility. Love's Farm is our parish. The church that now meets on Love's Farm is intent on being a church at the heart of the community, with the community at the heart of the church. This resonates entirely with the picture of the New Testament church. American pastor and author John Mark Comer writes, "We see throughout the scriptures the people of God are deeply rooted in places. This is a huge challenge because right now, one of the primary obstacles in Western society is that we have become placeless. Over the past century, there have been 2 major technological shifts, transportation and the digital age, which have allowed us to move farther apart yet remain connected. Mobility isn't all bad, but we have become placeless, and it's fragmenting our society at a soul level. In many of the letters of the churches, or to the churches, the people of God are identified by a place. Read the opening verses of Romans, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and you'll read words like, to the church in Rome, to all the saints in Ephesus, to the church of God in Corinth. The work of the church contributing to community building comes down to being present. For the church I lead, being present is both our intention within our wider community, but also in our relationships with one another, which is why we begin our Sunday morning simply by eating breakfast together. Professional and seemingly accomplished people sharing table with those struggling with unemployment, family breakup, or mental health issues, and so on. It is the most authentic community that I have ever been a part of, and it's the most engaged too, with almost everyone involved in service of someone in some way. For all those reasons, it nurtures the God-given inherent dignity and invitation to contribute. The Message translation of John 1:14 reads this: "The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighbourhood." Followers of Jesus must be an incarnation of God in the places they live, to the neighbours they live and work besides. The church offers communities continuity at a personal level. The challenge is for that to be expressed, at least by some, as a commitment to stability, to staying with their community for the sake of their community. Benedictine monks make such a vow of stability. One order expresses it like this: "We vow to remain all our life with our local community. We commit to live together, pray together, relax together. We give up the temptation to move from place to place in search of an ideal situation. The ideal that things would be better someplace else is usually an illusion. Staying put helps to build stability and story. We are part of a story with a story to tell, and as the church listens and loves and stays put and serves the communities we are a part of, we help others write the story we share in the place we are both part of. When that happens, people have a sense that they belong and that their contribution matters. It was surely fitting that of all the ways Brendan Cox, widower of the murdered MP Jo Cox, chose to mark the anniversary of her brutal death was by encouraging communities to come together, to write a bit more of their story, whether that was a picnic in a park or a local walk or a barbecue in someone's back garden, or, as was true in our case on Love's Farm, a street party to celebrate all the things we have in common by providing an opportunity to showcase those as well as spend time in one another's company, eating and drinking, and resolving to be the kind of neighbours and growing the kind of community that we want and need. There is actually so much more I would love to say and so many more stories I would love to tell, but my time is surely up. If I had to share 10 words, or just a few more, in place of 10 minutes, they would be these: listen, love, serve, share a meal, restore dignity, tell story, write story, and stay put.